not only you can have a beautiful lawn and it feeds you.
It
So
feeds you.
you you're cutting down on your grocery bill. You don't have to go to the grocery store
Yep.
anymore. All your food is in your backyard. If you're in
Yeah.
Minnesota, obviously you harvest it, you can it and store it for the winter. And
Mm.
um, also, the food that you are eating from your own backyard is grown with zero chemicals.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, epigenetic human performance coach. This is where we discuss all things lifestyle, environment, food, exercise, work, mind, and social interaction as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone. So if you're ready to start viewing you as an individual, take control of your life and health, and get results, buckle up, here we go.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, and this is a place where we talk about everything lifestyle and environment and how it relates to our genetic expression. So buckle up, people, today. All right, let me start with this. When we look at genetic expression and we talk about lifestyle and environment, what is one of the biggest players in that is food. And we know that what we put in our bodies is going to be turning some genes up, dialing some genes down. It makes a difference what we feed ourselves and the environment in which that food is produced or grown or raised. And so when I saw my guest today, I go back to this podcast page. I'm telling you, like, I'm finding gold in here. I feel like an excavator. This is amazing. And I saw him and his passion for what he does just jumped off the page. And what he does is so very different, yet so very simple. I said, need to bring this to my people. So today we're going to be talking about food forest. And again, this is like something I still have really not a whole lot of idea about it. That's why I said he's going to have to talk about all this, but it's food forest design. And his name is Travis Holzem. He is a Desert Storm Marine veteran. Hoorah! Hope I did that. I learned from the best of being married to one, having been married to one moons ago. A single father of three, he brings a unique blend of discipline, creativity, and passion to his work as the owner of Food Forest Design Minnesota. After a 25-year career in web design, SEO, and online marketing, Travis traded the digital world for the natural one, dedicating himself to revolutionizing local food production. He now empowers individuals, families, and communities to transform ordinary lawns and underutilized land into thriving, regenerative food forests. These low-maintenance ecosystems built on permaculture principles provide abundant, chemical-free yields year after year, enhancing biodiversity and soil health. Travis is making sustainable home food production a reality for anyone. He's not just designing landscapes, people. He is cultivating healthier lifestyles and building a more sustainable and equitable future, one food forest at a time. Now, how do you beat that? Like, I love this. Welcome to the program, Travis.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the intro.
Okay. Now, I started as a cop. I end up an epigenetic human performance coach. Like, people are like, what the hell? You, SEO, web design, digital world, food forest. Okay. Tell the story. How did this happen? And then we want to find out what the hell is a food forest.
Perfect. We got to go way back to when I was a kid, when I was a young kid, because back in when I was a kid, back in the 70s, when growing up through the 80s, everybody had food in their yard. There was apple trees. Everybody in the neighborhood, someone had an apple tree or a pear tree, plum tree, or raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, everything. And everybody had an annual garden for their tomatoes and all their vegetables. And that was everywhere. And we could I have an identical twin brother that I grew up with, so I had someone to hang out with every single day. But as soon as the sun would come out, we were out the door until the street lights would
Word.
come. But we would go if we were hungry, instead of going back home, we go find something to eat in the neighborhood, and that always amazed me that there's food everywhere. And then my mom had a garden in the backyard. So she was always growing just all her vegetables and stuff like that every spring. And I happened to like cantaloupe and melon. And she would bring that home from the store and we would run out. I'm like, God, I love that stuff. And, and I'm like, Mom, can you get me some seeds? I want to try growing it. So she got me a couple packets of seeds and I planted it in the garden alongside her stuff. And then a few days later, here comes a sprout out of the ground, you know? And I was just totally amazed at it. And then, 3 months later, I have cantaloupes, all my own. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I finally start to put two and two together with all the stuff you're buying at the store, you could grow in your own yard instead. And so it always amazed me and I always, in the back of my mind, wanted to be able to grow all my own food. And
Mhm.
then life goes on and I went in the Marine Corps, Desert Storm, got out, ended up having my first kid at 27 years old, and then I got in the bar business, matter of fact. I was bartender, bar manager. It allowed me to raise my kid during the day, work at night,
Mhm.
and then in 1998, I saved up all my change for 6 months. I threw it in a bucket every night and had $4,000 in change in 6 months. I worked in a busy place. So I bought my first computer to become, self-made as far as web design, all that stuff. So I started designing websites, doing SEO, and then I had my own small web development agency. I had an office, and I grew it was a townhouse style office. Out the back door was a patio, and I grew food out there, because nobody went out there, so I had these cloth pots, cloth bags.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I grew tomatoes and peppers and herbs. I'd start them on my desk in front of the big window and then move them outside, and I always wanted to grow food. So in 2019, 2020, a friend of mine down in Florida who lived in Costa Rica for many years built or planted out a food forest in Costa Rica.
Okay.
And I'll get to what a food forest is here shortly. But and then he came back to the United States, he was living in Florida, and we had been trying to bring a greenhouse to market that went in everybody's backyard. But then soon as COVID hit, he was out of business down in Florida, and he called me up, and we had been talking about growing food here and there, and
Mhm.
he goes, "I don't have business anymore, so we need to get this off the ground. And you build a website and the back end of the business, and I'll do all the talking." So
Yeah.
we launched a company called Food Forest Abundance, and transforming lawns into edible landscapes, food forests. Basically, we got into it because you look at lawns and they might have some ornamental trees and they're grass, but there's no life in the landscapes because they've been heavily fertilized and poisoned with glyphosate and Roundup and all that stuff because nobody
Mhm.
wants weeds in their yard.
Yep. Yep.
Everybody wants to have the greenest lawn on the block, so they don't realize that all that poison's going right down. It washes right out of the yard, goes right in the sewer system, and now it's in all our food and water. But that brought me that's how I got to where I am. And so basically for the past 5 years, my life has been about transforming lawns and anything I can design into food forests, edible landscapes. And because that is, I think, the way we need to go for
Yeah.
just to save humanity.
Yeah. And as we talked earlier, like I said, we have to be I really tout on here being your own best medical advocate. That's what I preach to my people all the time. Knowing yourself, understanding yourself. And again, this is just another way to take control
Mhm.
of you and
Yes.
how you choose to live, where you choose to take your body. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what is the food forest. And I saw on your web page, also on your Facebook page, edible edible lawns. All I pictured was like just somebody laying on the ground just trying to eat their lawn. So that was like, what the hell? So talk to us first about a food forest and how do you go about designing that? And what kind of requirements would someone need at their home or like you said, their office, wherever they're choosing to do it? What what does it look like? What would they need? But what is it?
Okay. A food let's go with how we design, and then I'll
Okay,
get into what a food forest is. And
perfect.
I design using permaculture, permaculture principles, and permaculture is permanent culture, and it's a design philosophy or design science and practice that creates sustainable and self-sufficient systems by mimicking patterns and relationships in nature. So
Okay, makes sense.
just like you're driving down the road and you see a wooded area on the side of the road, you have a whole bunch of different plants, shrubs, trees, and everything, and all different sizes, and nobody's taking care of that but nature,
Mhm.
okay?
Yep.
But what you don't realize is each one of those serves a purpose in that landscape. They all help each other. That's a community of trees and plants, and basically,
Mhm.
that's what a food forest is. And
Okay.
a food forest consists of 7 layers, and that allows you to grow more food in a given area than a traditional garden. And
Okay.
a food forest consists of perennial plants, and a perennial is a plant or tree or flower that comes back year after year after year.
Mhm.
If you're in a warm climate, they don't go through that dormant cycle. I'm in Minnesota where we're in winter right now, so in the fall, all the trees drop their leaves and they go to sleep,
Yep.
and then they wake up in the winter. And so all these food forests, they contain fruit trees, nut trees, medicinal shrubs and flowers, and self-seeding annuals.
Oh,
And
wow.
so when you look at 7 layers of a food forest, the top layer is the canopy layer, which would be your larger trees, fruit and nut trees that and support trees. So your canopy that it can shade some of the trees and shrubs and flowers below that can't handle direct sunlight. It's too strong for them. So that helps put a canopy over the entire system. And then you have your subcanopy layer, which would be your smaller trees and dwarf fruit trees and hazelnuts and stuff that grow around the canopy trees. And then we get lower to the shrub layer, which is shrubs like raspberries, blueberries,
Mm.
and stuff like that. And then we get your herbaceous layer, which is flowering and edible plants and a lot of herbs and vegetables. And then we get to your ground cover, which is low-lying plants and stuff, and that covers the soil and prevents erosion, but also it protects the ground from the elements, rain and sun.
Mhm.
And you can do that with plants or you can do it with mulch. Mulch helps also. But if you like clover, you can plant that across your entire yard and not have grass to mow every year. And as tall as clover gets, maybe 3 inches, and it's nice and soft and it has little flowers, but you never have to have grass in your yard. But now we get to the ground covers, then we get to the root layer. And the root layer is designed to create pathways for water and air in the soil and inoculate life into the soil. You have your
Mhm.
like tubers, carrots, and
Oh, yeah.
beets, all those type of
Parsnip,
stuff because
potatoes,
and
yams.
sweet potatoes, yeah, and it
Mm,
breaks up the soil and
getting
allows
hungry.
water and air to get into it. And then we have your climbing layer, which is all your vining plants. So that tree in the middle, that fruit tree, is actually acts like a trellis and allows grapes, blackberries, passion fruit, kiwi, and it just gives you another layer of productivity in your food forest. So when you plant all these together, they are all doing a specific job depending on what type of plant it is. And some are fixing nitrogen in the soil. And like the roots and tubers are breaking up the soil to make it easier for plants and roots to get into the soil and get nutrients.
Wow.
And so there's just so many different layers. It sounds confusing maybe, but when
No,
you
I don't see it confusing. My mind is blown because I was picturing, like, just a more sustainable type garden. So this is blowing my mind that how you're talking, like, the canopies, and then the shrubs, and now the climbing, it literally is a forest.
yes,
Like,
and
little
low maintenance. It's low maintenance because
God.
it's all perennials or self-seeding annuals. They come back year after year after year, and they get larger. The trees get larger, produce more. Same with the berry bushes and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's all once you plant this out, it's going to be there forever. It's going to come back year after year.
Now,
Uh, okay.
can I ask a couple questions? Because
Yes.
I've been frantically writing questions here. Like, this is popping in my head as I listen, because if I don't write it down, I'll forget. So, first of all, do you choose the types of foods based on climate in that area? Because Florida is
Yes.
different than Minnesota. I'm in Colorado.
Yeah.
So, one, do you help the person choose based on what they like? And then, are there issues with certain do most nut trees, are they able to grow in most places? These are things that are coming up in my head, like,
That
how does
and
that work?
that's exactly what I do. I'm in 4B. I'm not sure what Colorado is, but so for instance, in 4B, that's the grow zone that I'm in.
Okay.
So I get a list of trees and plants and flowers and all the natives and everything that grows in this grow zone. And I take that list and I give it to the homeowner, property owner, and they say what they wanna grow, but then also I give them the list because it might jog some new ideas of stuff. I didn't know I could grow that here, so let's try that. So then we work together and come up with a list of everything that you can grow on the climate. And then that's when the fun begins. That's where you start putting everything together
Mhm.
into an intelligent design and just a natural forest.
Yeah.
And we put things together in guilds, which is a community of plants. It could be a round circle with the fruit tree in the middle, and then everything else is around the edge. Because you
Uh-huh.
could have your pest deterrents on the outside edge to keep the pests away. Deer are a problem.
Yeah.
Deer love to eat
Yeah, in a
fruit
lot of
trees,
areas.
so you plant really smelly herbs around the edges
Oh,
because
wow.
they don't like certain smells. So
Okay.
you get so that's just one way to prevent deer but you also and then you have your pollinators that attract your the bees and butterflies and all that stuff. And then you have comfrey, which is a dynamic accumulator. Comfrey is one of the it's a very
Come
good
for this.
medicinal plant. And
Yes. Yes.
but what it does it is a dynamic accumulator. What that means, it has a very, very long taproot that goes down 8 to 10 feet into the soil down below,
Wow.
whereas your fruit trees and berry bushes have very short root systems, so they don't go as deep. So what the comfrey does, it mines all the nutrients and minerals from the soil that they can't get to, and it takes it up in the DNA of its plant, of the stem and the leaves and the flowers, and it not only attracts your pollinators, but it also, once it gets nice and mature, you chop it down and you use it as live mulch with your gill. So all the nutrients in the comfrey is now going right back into the
Going back
top
to
of
the
the
soil.
soil. Yeah.
It
And
just
then you
keeps
have,
feeding itself.
yeah, so it's how nature does everything. And
Yeah. Yeah.
go ahead.
Is it it's so I'm a very avid hiker, and I vividly pictured 2 hikes I've been on. One was up in Wyoming and the other was in Canada last summer. And in Wyoming, we came across we're looking for a waterfall. We were way back, right? Back in the woods. And like a whole field of wild blueberries
Ooh.
and some strawberries out in the middle of nowhere. And you could smell it. And I'm like, are these poison? I'm like afraid to eat anything. But you had you have the big trees around it, you have the bush, like everything that you're picturing, like that you're talking about, I saw there. And then in Wyoming, and there had been a burn through there. So things had just started
Mhm.
coming up again, like little baby evergreens and stuff. It was really cool because as you walk the path, it was like lining them with this bright blue, green. And then as you go up the path, there's the raspberry bushes, the fresh raspberries that started that I have so many pictures of these raspberries because they don't look like the shit you get in the store.
No,
They're
not
they're
at all, not
they're
at all.
tiny, like the little wild blueberries are tiny, but these raspberries were tiny and round and this red, this like magenta,
Mhm.
pinkish red. And again, you could pick it up and smell it, and the taste is it's brilliant. I don't know how else to describe it. And again, you had these these big trees, some of them that had survived, but these other things coming up, and here's all these wild raspberries lining. It was just like life again. And so I'm just picturing everything you're saying, like going, now I want a backyard. Yes, I want this in my life. This just makes so much sense. And you're talking about nut trees, fruit trees, herbs. What about veggies? Do veggies come into play as well?
Yeah, yes. Well, there's some that are perennial, but most of them are just annuals. When I design, I'm doing it in zones, and zone 1 is your annual garden right outside your back door.
Okay.
That is where your fruits, your vegetables that are only gonna last, like here in Minnesota, we have May until October,
Yeah.
basically. That's when harvesting is. But you want all of your veggies and annuals close to the house. So you can go right out your back door, everything's right there. And then as we get further away from the home, your back door, we got zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, depending
Uh-huh.
on what you are growing. The ones that are less, you don't need as much, they're further away because you didn't pay less attention to them, and
Makes
you
sense.
don't need to. But yeah, and like you were saying, when you saw all these blueberries and raspberries out in the wild, a friend of mine up in Spirit Mountain, Minnesota, by Duluth, Minnesota, it's he has 80 acres of property and it's 100% off grid. And he has like 200 something different types of food growing on his property.
Oh my god.
And and when he started it 10, 12 years ago, it was right around his little house. He's got a little
Mhm.
cabin, little shack. Now he's got solar panels and all that stuff for energy. But now it is spread out everywhere because all the animals come into his system they eat all the food, and now they're going out in the wild spreading it. So now you can
Yep.
walk for miles, and his food forest has spread so far, and there's a lot of government land that backs up to his property, so for miles you can walk, and his food forest is everywhere. And he goes, "I can
Wow.
go a couple miles and there's raspberries and berries everywhere."
Oh,
And also, that was old Indian lands, and Indians planted out all their landscapes were food forests because that's how they survived,
so they
is on
left.
food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could actually see remnants of their food forests out there too.
Well,
That's what you would
this is
probably
stuff I never
see.
thought of. Yeah. So you have a client that comes on and says, I want to put together a food forest. So you guys work together to see climate wise what's going to work the best, their landscape, how to put everything in there. So then what? Do you help them do the planting and build that food forest, or is that on the client to do that? And then how easy, and I'm wondering, like, how hard is it to do, but how long does it actually take from the planning stage to your food forest and then to see it start to produce?
Okay. When someone comes to me, I I work with them, we choose the food they want growing and what else you want in your landscape. You want a greenhouse, you want solar power, water catchment systems, because we want everything that goes into your system's energy. Water is
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
And when it rains, we want to be able to capture that water and keep it in your system and use all that water to feed all your forest. You don't want it to rain and then run out
Yeah.
and then it's
Yeah.
gone. The energy's gone. But if you capture it, whether it be a pond or a swale, we can get into what swales are, but it's kind of like a ditch, and
Okay.
and you can direct it where you want the water to go, but you plant inside the swales also. But you capture that water. Sun is energy, wind is energy. You know, you take all these different factors into consideration and the soil types. But I actually get on Google Earth and get a top-down view of the property, so I get all the measurements, and then the elevation of your land because we have to know where's the water going when it rains. So if we have to
Okay.
dig into the ground and build up the earth in certain areas to capture that water.
Mhm.
So it depends what you want in your landscape. And then we do that. I put a design together, and when I'm done with the design, I put together a narrative of your property. So I take the history of your land, your soil types, and all the different factors that go into
Wow.
determining the wind, the water, how much sun does your property get, how much rainfall is in your area, all those types of things. And I explain all that in the narrative. And depending on what is in your food forest, we take every part and explain it. And then show you this narrative shows you exactly how to install your own food forest if you want to.
Okay.
It's for the DIY person, but not
Okay.
for the DIY person. So if you if that's something you want to do, it's you can take this blueprint. That's what I call a food forest blueprint. So you get your blueprint, you can take that and you can install it yourself. Or you can hire me to do it, or my company, or I have installers in other states also that can install. Or I do all the design work and they can do the installs. But also in that, and then you get a basically instruction manual for the food forest. Every everything that goes into taking care of your food forest. You know, pruning trees, adding mulch, and composting, all those types of things go. So they're getting not just a design, they're getting a complete narrative
Everything.
of the history and then a owner's manual of their food forest. And then we're also going to show a list of where to source all your trees and plants, seeds and soils and mulch.
Yeah.
So we figure out where you have to get everything, and that's also in there too. It's very detailed and
Hugely comprehensive.
try to make it as comprehensive as possible, but
Yeah.
simple too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now they hire me to install it. Now I put together an estimate for what it's going to cost for all the trees and all the labor and everything else. I might have to bring in uh, skid steer, bobcat, stuff like that, move
Yep.
soil
Yep.
and stuff like that. Then we put the food forest in the ground. Okay, so we that could take, depending on how large the area is and how much is involved. I could be putting in 50 trees, 50 fruit
Wow.
trees. I've done that before. It took me a month, but
Wow.
because not only
So
am
it
I
can be
putting the
big.
fruit tree, yes. Oh, it can be small, it could be large. So it could be 1/16th of an acre all the way to 200 acres. It just
Wow.
depends. Because I do homesteads also, off-grid homesteads. We design those.
Okay.
So depending on what's in your landscape for the design is determines how long it's gonna take. And, and also, do you want to wait 2 or 3 years to get fruit on your apple trees or your plum
That's
trees?
my other big question.
Or
Yeah.
do you want me to put a tree in the ground to be the fastest way to get fruit? So in that case, there's certain nurseries that I work here locally, but I could find them everywhere, that they have more mature trees. They cost a little more on the front end, but you're
Mhm.
gonna get fruit right away.
You're already
So
getting it.
you
Yeah.
a a smaller bare root tree that's only 3 or 4 feet high, you're gonna wait
Mhm.
2, 3, 4 years sometimes before you get fruit. So if you
Yeah.
buy a tree that's already 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, 10, 12 feet high, they're really skinny, but they're
But they're
already some
producing.
have fruit on them already.
Yeah.
Mm. And then year after year after year, obviously, you get larger and larger
Sure.
yields from that. So that
Yeah.
is and your vegetables, we already know how long vegetables take. They put a
Yep.
seed in the ground, they're gonna take a few months. Raspberries and berry bushes are pretty fast. If you're putting tiny ones in the ground, obviously, you're gonna take some time. But I've had blueberries on a 1-foot tall blueberry bush. But you can buy more mature blueberry bushes and raspberry bushes, and you have fruit
Yeah.
right away. So, the more mature stuff, fruit right away, otherwise, you're gonna wait. And then
Yeah. That makes sense.
so
That's what I wondered. If you do the mature ones where they're already producing, because someone like
mhm.
me, I'm not very patient, and I'd be like, I don't want to wait 2, 3 years. I put this in. I want to start seeing this now. I want to start this. And then
Yeah, and
same
for the
same would
most
go with
part, your only maintenance is adding mulch every year,
yeah,
to
yeah.
the soil. Because with that mulch, when we plant it out, we do what's called sheet mulching. If you wanna get rid of your grass, you know, the best way to do it is to take the grass out and start with without grass, but we can also I get big rolls of cardboard, corrugated cardboard, and I roll cardboard out and I put the cardboard over the grass. That acts as a weed suppressor, but also that breaks down, becomes worm food, and it adds
Mhm.
helps build soil. But then we put good gardening soil mixture and soil amendments on top, like 6 to 8 inches of soil on top of that cardboard. That also weighs it down to suppress all the grass and weeds and stuff. And then about 4 to 6 inches of mulch on top of that. So what the mulch does, it not only protects your soil, it's holding moisture in your landscape.
Then, yeah.
When you get into those winter or summer months where it's really hot and it doesn't rain,
Mhm.
there's moisture in your
Oh, that's
soil.
still
So
protected down
it's
under
more
there.
drought tolerant. So,
Makes
you know,
sense.
everything is taken into consideration to make your food forest, and nature's taking care of it. You gotta prune your trees
Yeah.
every now and then, but once nature takes its course, you pretty much it's hands off, other than harvesting every year. And
This is fascinating. Tell tell me about the edible lawn.
that's pretty much
That's
is
basically what this is having
yeah,
your lawn. You can basically eat pretty
edible
much
landscape.
everything out there.
It's
Edible
fruit
landscape.
on
Got it.
there. Yeah, yep.
Okay. Okay. Now here's a question. So I consider myself a black thumb. I kill everything. I'm still holding on. I have a money tree that's holding on. And it's funny how you talk about some plants or trees that, you're waiting for the fruit. I'm in a condo, so I don't have any ground, or I'd be like, just come out here and fix something for me. Just give me a little fruit tree. I picked up at Home Depot 5 years ago a potted olive tree. I have waited for 4 years last year. It finally got the flowers.
Wow.
And so I look online, what does that mean? I've never seen the flowers on here. And it says, "Oh, now you're gonna get this is should be ready to fruit this year." Nope, the flower the flowers, I'm going, "When when's this tree gonna give me some olives?" So now you saw why I'm thinking,
Mhm.
what could you plant that would give it to me right away? Because I'm telling you, being a mom of this plant and waiting for it to give me something, I don't think I'm ever gonna get olives. I think it's just gonna be a pretty thing out of my balcony every year. I'm trying, but so I've got the black thumb. I kill herbs. Nobody kills herbs. I can't keep basil alive. How how easy would it be for me to kill or someone like me? Because I know there are others out there that are saying, "Oh my god, I'm feeling you, Susan." How how do you work with people that really suck when it comes to
When
growing things?
when we put the trees and plants and bushes in the ground, we're adding soil amendments that determine depending on what type your soil type is. We add amendments to the soil to help everything. And we have biochar. You don't have to worry about what that is. If you can look it up and stuff. But biochar is it's ash or ashes and burnt wood, stuff like that. But that adds carbon to the soil. Then we have worm castings. Worm castings, you put that in the hole with the tree, and next thing you got worms everywhere. Worms are great. But we add all these amendments to the soil that help that tree or plant thrive. And for the
To
most
make
part,
it
yeah, and
to
for
make
the
it
most
less easy
part,
for us to kill it.
yes. And your main job is to make sure everything's watered.
That's
Make
it.
sure it gets enough water. And
Yeah.
because if you don't water it, that's your own fault. You know what I mean? I can't guarantee things are gonna grow if you don't water it,
Yeah.
because it needs water to survive, and
Yeah.
so otherwise just wither, dry up. So
Yeah.
that is that case. But when you soil is the most important thing. If you have good soil, everything's gonna grow well for the
Okay.
most part. If it's in the right climate and stuff like that. And like you, I'm in a townhouse right now. So I have a 10-foot by 10-foot patio on the front of my townhouse.
Okay.
And I actually have 40 different types of food growing on that patio.
Are you kidding me?
You
On
know,
a
I
10
have
by 10.
yes. So I built shelves. So I have going upwards, going vertical, going up. And then I just take advantage of all that space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there might be 3 things in one pot, but they can all coexist together. So I take advantage of that space. And then indoors, I have an olive tree. It was about a
Do
foot
you
and a
get
half.
olives? If you
Not
plant
yet.
olives?
It
Okay,
was
good.
only a yeah, yeah. It was only a foot and a half when I got it. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
it's almost 4 feet high.
Yeah.
and still no olives, but it was more of a, I wanna have an olive tree. I think it'd be cool. Maybe someday I'll have olives. I got a dwarf lemon tree and lime tree, couple of those, and I've actually gotten limes and lemons, so it goes in my window in the winter and outside in the summer, and I have pomegranate trees. I'm still waiting for that one.
Pomegranate trees?
Yes, and still waiting for that 'cause it looks more like a bush, and but
Uh-huh.
they can get pretty big too, so I just keep it under control, and I've actually talked to someone here in Minnesota that has grown them and is actually grows pomegranates, and he puts it outside in the summer,
Wow.
inside under grow lights in the winter, and, I also have, like, 13 banana trees, and they're right
Oh
now
my god.
in my basement under grow lights, and that olive tree's under a grow light, so they're 12 hours a day, there's light, and then at 7 o'clock tonight, it will turn off, and it'll be in the dark, and, so
Wow.
yeah, and so I
In
have all this
Minnesota, a banana
growing.
trees in Minnesota. I'm
Yep.
my
Outside in the
mind keeps
summer,
exploding.
inside in the winter, and
Yeah,
all of that stuff, and then in the winter, it's in my windows. Every window I
yeah.
have, I have something growing in front of it.
That's where my olive tree is.
Yeah,
In my bedroom.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then I
'cause I have no
throw
room anywhere.
I got some seeds from a lemon, throw them in a little pot, just and now I have a couple of baby lemon trees that are about a foot high from
That
last.
actually works?
Yeah,
Taking lemon seeds and putting them in a little pot. You're kidding
yeah.
me.
The one thing I've had trouble getting to propagate is oranges or
Okay,
tangerines. Well, I'm
okay.
gonna get that so I can have a dwarf orange tree and have oranges. I just
You're
think it'd be cool.
determined.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
think
so
it'd be
too.
so cool. Yeah,
When I
so
when I was at I think it was Lowe's, maybe not Home Depot, when I found my little olive tree, and I was between the olive tree and one of the citrus ones as well. And I thought, "But olives, who does olives? I have to get the olives."
yeah,
So I would go to geez, I wonder if the other one would have worked better, but I keep it outside all summer, but then we get cold here too, so that's when I bring it in. My issue is I would love to keep it at my sliding glass door because there's so much sun, but
yeah.
I have a cat that likes to eat those damn olive leaves, and they're hard.
Mhm.
They're like
Yeah.
sharp, and he eats raw food, and the only raw food he eats is beef. So do you know what it's like when this little terrorist goes up my plant and then I feed him and then you get raw meat with olive leaves in there
Oh,
regurgitated
boy.
out because he can't get them down. So I have to lock my olive tree in my bedroom so it only gets the light as far as that gets it. But I find that when I put it outside in the summer or spring or as long as it's not going into like the 20s anymore
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
30s, they're resilient as hell.
Yep,
It
they
it
are.
just it's really a pretty little
Yeah, they
tree.
are. They're awesome, I like them, and I have fig trees also. I
Oh,
actually got some figs off of them, and I'm testing.
wow.
The ones I have are, I think, what they call Chicago Hardy figs, or something like that, but they're really not supposed to be left outdoors in the winter. You're supposed
Uh-huh.
to bring I brought them indoors last winter and got figs over the winter, but this winter, I'm trying to see if they'll make it
Okay.
through the winter because I got a cherry tree out on my patio and a couple apple trees in
Ugh.
pots,
I'm
and
coming to visit.
and
Lock your doors.
so
I'm gonna
those
come and
obviously
shop.
will those things will obviously come back because they're perennials, but I'm trying to see if these figs will
Yeah.
come back, and there are figs that you can get that will come back year after year, but these ones aren't it. So, we can try it. You can actually grow kiwi, several different types of kiwi in Minnesota also. So,
Like, I never, ever would have guessed any of this. Like, I just think, "Hey, peaches out on the western slope." Now if I could get a Palisade peach tree to work, I would probably never leave home. That's my addiction. Cherries. And I never even considered that you could actually do that the way you're doing it. So you're just the way you think is fascinating to me. And I love that I just want to try this and I have to experiment on this. You doing with food what I'm doing with eating food, making food,
Mhm.
right? With my lifestyle. I guinea pig, I try everything before I bring it to clients. And that's how I get my know-how. It's not through experts saying this works and this works. It's let's actually put this to use and see what works for different people. And you're doing that with your plants of let me see what actually works. How can I make this
Yeah,
work in this client climate for somebody and for me? And yeah, I love it. I love it.
that's what it's all about is observing
Yes.
and reacting and working with nature. And one
Yep.
thing people need to understand too, they might be like, "Oh, I don't want fruit trees in my yard. That's gonna be ugly." But they look
Oh,
a hell of a lot more beautiful in the springtime than these ornamental trees. If you ever seen an apricot
oh yeah.
tree or a peach tree bloom or cherry trees, they're beautiful,
Beautiful. Oh, there's
and they
cherry trees.
smell up
Oh
the
my God.
entire neighborhood. They'll smell the
Oh yeah.
entire neighborhood up,
Yep.
and
I
then
love it.
not only are you can have a beautiful lawn, and it feeds you.
It
So
feeds you.
you you're cutting down on your grocery bill. You don't have to go to the grocery store
Yep.
anymore. All your food is in your backyard. If you're in
Mhm.
Minnesota, obviously you harvest it, you can it, and store it for the winter, and,
Mhm.
um, also, the food that you are eating from your own backyard is grown with 0 chemicals, 0
Yep.
herbicides,
No
0
pesticides,
pesticides,
nothing.
so you're
Love it.
getting 100% nutrient-dense food without poisons, and your health is gonna be better because you're eating
Amen.
and you're
Yep.
saving money, your health is better. If you have small children, they're gonna grow up
Oh
learning how to be
man. What a
self-sufficient.
difference.
They're gonna be able to, "Hey,
Yeah.
mom, I want a snack." Take your little ass outside and go pick
Yep.
whatever you want, you know? I don't
Do you
wanna
know how
make
much
anything.
that
Go.
alone
Yep.
would cut the
Mhm.
obesity rate of kids?
Yes. Yes.
Get them outside,
Mhm.
away from the computers, and go pick the real food. You want some cucumber? Go grab one off the vine. You want an
Yeah,
apple? Go pick one off the tree. Yeah, go exercise. Like
and
move.
getting your
And
hands in the dirt and getting your
yep,
hands in the dirt, getting your feet
yep.
bare feet in the soil, change your mind.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had a
Mentally
garden.
change your mind.
We had a summer garden. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and it was a little island, so you couldn't. It was only certain things you could grow, but we had a garden. I it as a little kid, I had a blast going back there and picking. And I remember, I remember one time I came in with a head of broccoli for my mom, and she went to cook it, and the rest of the family's there. And I'm like, "There's a worm on here," and she looked, and there was a little worm on there. She's like, "Shh, don't you tell anybody." Don't tell anybody. It's actually there's critters out in the garden that now we know that they're good, but it was just funny that it
Yes.
was sitting on there. But I loved going out there and you had fresh Jersey tomatoes, like everything, watermelon. We tried the cantaloupe as well. We only got little tiny ones, but they were
Mhm.
awesome little tiny cantaloupe. I think it's a way to bring your family. It's a little bit of a bonding experience with you and your children to teach
Well,
them
yeah.
this as well. So there's just so many benefits to it. So if somebody wants to work with you, tell us what are the ways they can find you? How do they go about this? And I do tell everybody that all of your info will and links and everything will also be in all of the show notes. But go ahead and tell everybody how they can reach out to you to work with you to have their own tree forest,
You can find me at Food Forest Design,
food forest.
Minnesota, and that is Minnesota spelled out or the abbreviation MN. I have both of them, and they both go to the same site. So that is how to get a hold of me or Food Forest Design Minnesota on YouTube. I have almost 400 videos there of
Wow.
doing it. So you can learn a lot there and get a hold of me. And I've actually been out on clients' property putting trees in the ground. My phone rings and woman is I just bought a house and I've always wanted a food forest in my yard. And I'm watching your video right now. Can you do that in my yard? Yes, I
Yeah.
can. She goes, okay, just tell me what I need to do. Where do I pay? So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
just,
Sign me up.
oh,
Cool.
yeah,
Do you ever run into issues with any of these crazy HOAs?
that I haven't yet, but that is that is definitely a problem because HOAs are just tyrants. Oh,
Yeah, I
I
have to
mean,
say assholes, but
like, do that, yeah, assholes, tyrants, yeah. Wow, there's not too much difference between the 2. But well, they don't think logically. They're about
yeah,
control. Oh, you gotta have
amen.
an ugly tree in your yard that doesn't
Yeah,
feed you, rather than this pretty tree that
yeah.
does feed you. Also, one thing I am trying to do is we all pay taxes,
Mhm.
and every city that you live in, I live in, we have a police department, we have a library, we have a city hall, we have all these different buildings, and they have properties with tons of space and green grass everywhere, and all they do is they pay money to have someone cut the grass all the time.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
and we have all these people on welfare and food support, and why can't they take our tax dollars and put
Community
food
food
in the
forest.
ground everywhere, and
Yeah,
there's food for everybody. And so you solve food insecurity by having food everywhere. It's grown without poison, so your health
yeah,
and your population is gonna get much better, and your crime rate is gonna go way down because full bellies are not out committing crimes, trying to rob people, to steal stuff, to go sell, to get money to eat.
yep,
So it's
yep.
and so there you go, and you go down the street, you see all these big pots on the side of the street with pretty flowers in them. They can
Mhm.
be tomatoes and peppers and herbs and
Yep,
native flowers, black-eyed Susans, echinacea. You can make tea with that. There's
yeah, yeah,
everything could be medicinal or food producing everywhere on every landscape, every city park where the kids play could
yep.
be food everywhere. And that's my goal anyway
Wow.
is,
Love it.
you know,
I love it. I think that is a fantastic vision. And I just everything we've talked about here, the passion that came off of your page when I looked at you translated to this. And I just think it's incredible what you're doing. And anybody listening, just hit him up. If you have that yard and you've been wondering about what to do with it, this is no better that you could do with this. And I think it's fantastic. And reach out to him. Reach out to Travis.
and I got a couple of quotes for you. One
Do it.
is growing your own food is like printing your own money.
Yeah, love it.
There. And then another, Bill Mollison, who's the father of permaculture. That's who I learned from. And he says, though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? I love both of those. Thank you.
And yeah, that solves all the
Thank you.
world's biggest problems.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your vision, and what you do with us. And I sure hope that there's some people reaching out to you saying, Travis, help me
Yeah,
with
I
my
can
food
design
forest.
anywhere in the country. Anywhere in the country. I have designers, I have mentors and designers, and I have some in Florida, some in Canada,
Wow.
Michigan,
Anywhere.
everywhere, California, Washington State, but pretty much everywhere across the country, and they're all
Love it.
experienced in all different climates, so we
Yeah.
can design anywhere.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please share this podcast, people. Share this podcast. There may be somebody out there just looking for something just like this, like the woman that bought that house that called you and said,
Yeah,
I'm ready. Like, I want to do this. Let's do it. And with 400 videos, get on there, take a look. And I think this is a fabulous revolution you've started here. And we're just trying to make America healthy again. That's what it's about,
there you
right?
go.
Starting
Hoorah.
from literally from the ground up. So
Yes.
thank you for joining us. Get out there, be your most authentic self, and make it a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who would find the information useful. Also, if you could leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, It'll help the information get out to others. You can check out my podcast site and sign up for my newsletter for updates and upcoming shows, and that link is in the show notes below. Go make it a great day and let your authentic self shine.